Welcome back to the Irish Bandit channel, and welcome back to more Cabin Fever. We are about to go into Chapter 7 integration after everything that happened. Oof, that was a rough one to get through. Hopefully it doesn't get that bad. I think we're coming to the end very soon. We'll have to wait and see as we continue on, but I'll let you know if and when we are coming to the end. So let's get right into it. Let's load the game up, and yeah, Chapter 7, here we go. The next morning I awoke to the sound of rain softly pelting the windows. The storm had passed, leaving only a damp, drizzly day behind. I kept my eyes closed and listened. I could hear the faint sound of the rain dripping from the downspout along the house. I stretched my arms. The bed around me was empty and cold. Mallory was gone, but I knew she had been there because I could still feel her on my skin. The cabin felt extra chilly. I got out of bed and dressed up warm, pulling on a pair of worn-out slippers. I made my way downstairs. Right away I spotted Mallory in the kitchen and felt my face break into a smile. She had a bucket and a bunch of rags out, and she seemed to be cleaning quite furiously with a cloth and spray bottle in hand.
Good morning.
She startled upright, fumbling and dropping the spray bottle. It clattered on the floor at her feet.
You scared me.
Sorry. I guess these slippers add +1 to my sneak ability.
Mallory bent to pick up the bottle. When she stood back up, I noticed how red her cheeks were, and how the rest of her face looked almost sickly pale.
Are you feeling okay?
She quickly averted her gaze.
I'm fine. I just got dizzy from standing up so quickly.
I didn't think I really believed her. She was feeling awkward, maybe even hiding something. Had I done something to make her uncomfortable? I looked around at the sparkling kitchen. The cabinets, appliances, and dishes all gleamed like new.
You must have woken up really early to get this much work done. Did you get enough sleep?
What's that? Oh, yes I did.
Then her face softened, and her tone turned sincere.
I think last night was the best sleep I've ever had.
My heart fluttered with acknowledgement, and with the memory of falling asleep with her in my arms.
Good. I agree.
She nodded and turned back to finish up her chores in the kitchen. I decided to check in with work stuff, so I booted up my computer. There were only a handful of emails needing attention. I handled those and glanced through my work deadlines, making sure I was still on track with each of my freelance jobs. For whatever reason, I wasn't finding it easy to focus. I kept glancing out the window, then zoning out as I watched the dribbling rain. It really showed no signs of stopping. I noticed an empty glass I'd left on the table outside was filled to the brim with rainwater. The soaked wooden planks of the deck looked like oh, I cannot read today. The soaked wooden planks of the deck looked dark like caramel. There we go. I thought about the coming winter. I'd have to show Mallory how to protect the garden, and the hens, and the bees when the cooler weather came. You planning on her sticking around that long? And then there was all the fun things we could do together. I wondered if she'd gone tobogganing before, or had a bonfire out in the snow. If I could find somewhere online, oh jeez. Yeah, if I could find somewhere online to buy marshmallows and ordered them right away, they might get dropped off sometime in the winter. Then came a sudden clatter and thud from the kitchen. I jumped, nearly knocking my coffee mug off my desk.
Mallory?
Uh-oh. Don't. Not the day to be doing this. She didn't answer. I stood up quickly, walking over to see what happened. My throat tightened when I looked past the counter. Mallory laid sprawled out on the floor, her cheeks red and beads of sweat gleaming on her forehead. Her eyes were closed, her head gently lolling to the side.
Mallory!
I rushed to her side, dropping to my knees and propping her in my arms. The touch of her skin warmed my hands. She was burning up. A groan left her lips and her eyes fluttered open.
Mallory, are you okay?
Hey there. Why are we on the floor?
Her gaze seemed to drift past me, as though she was having a hard time focusing.
You must have fainted. I knew something wasn't right. Why didn't you tell me?
I'm fine. It was just a sudden dizzy spell. I haven't eaten breakfast, that's probably it.
But I could feel her body starting to tremble. Her skin felt fever hot, and yet there were goosebumps on her arms and legs. Shit. My only instinct now was to make sure she was okay. I lifted her up off the floor.
Oh my, what are you doing? Ew, put me down!
I quickly carried her over to the couch and put her down there. I covered her in blankets and tucked her in tightly, my face set with grim determination. I brushed her hair back to feel her forehead, and ignored the anxious way my stomach clenched. I darted back to the kitchen, grabbing the temperature scanner from the drawer, and returned to Mallory's side.
Honestly, I'm fine. I probably just overworked myself.
Not buying it.
I held up the scanner. It seemed to take forever and ever to come up with a reading, and when it did, my heart sank.
You definitely have a fever.
Mallory seemed to shrink underneath the blankets. Seeing her like this, looking so helpless and uncertain, made my heart feel like it was being painfully squeezed.
Is it your leg? Let me look at it. Maybe you've developed an infection. When did you start feeling sick? This morning? We can get your temperature under control with some aspirin, no worries. And then we'll go from there.
I didn't know when I had started to pace, but there I was, heading this way and that, making my way over to the kitchen to search for whatever it was that could help her. I filled a glass of water and reached up into my cupboards for the aspirin bottle, grateful to have kept a supply. Except it wasn't there. Where was it? Had I misplaced it? Maybe Mallory had put it away somewhere else by mistake. I brought her the glass of water anyway and used a damp cloth to cool her forehead.
Shh. Just relax and let me take care of you for a minute, okay?
She opened her mouth to argue, probably, but backed down when she saw the look in my eyes. I moved to her feet and pushed back the blankets to expose her injured leg, and I carefully unwrapped the gauze and peeled back the bandages to see what was going on. There was bruising around the wound, and it was still a bit swollen, but then it had only been a few days. The healing process for something like that would take weeks.
I should be keeping a closer eye on this.
I shook my head.
Drink your water, okay? And you should have something to eat. What would you like?
I'm not really hungry. I just feel a bit tired. I'm sure I'll feel good as new if I just have a little nap.
I let out a concerned sigh, but agreed. After tucking her in a little tighter, I crossed back into the kitchen and stood there aimlessly for a minute or two. I didn't know what to do. Make her a pot of soup, said my brain. Good idea, brain, I thought.
Carrots, onions, celery, potatoes. Potatoes? Oh no, of course I don't have potatoes.
I muttered to myself as I searched my kitchen for ingredients, then began roughly chopping what I had. There was some rice in the pantry, I knew, and some peas in the freezer. Soon I was tipping my soup ingredients into a pot with a shower of salt and dried parsley. I covered all of it with a stock I'd made from chicken bones and veggie scraps, and then set it to simmer. When I crept back over to check on Mallory, I found her deeply asleep. I exchanged the damp cloth on her forehead and piled more blankets around her, then just sat and watched her, feeling dismayed. Deep down, I knew what this could be, but I didn't want to think about that. I didn't want to have to think about it. I didn't want to believe it. And if I had every reason to believe it, no. I stood up and returned to the kitchen, gave the bubbling soup a stir, and remembered the aspirin. I started searching for it again, checking each of the drawers in the cabinets. I searched in the bathroom and in the living room, even getting down on my knees to see if it had rolled underneath. Let me try that again. I searched in the bathroom and in the living room, even getting down on my knees to see if it had rolled beneath some furniture. That's when I spotted it, hidden beneath the couch where Mallory was resting. I reached under the couch and grabbed the bottle. A feeling of immense dread began to form within me. Already I could tell by the weight of the bottle and the silence as I turned it, but I had to see it to believe it. I popped off the cap and looked inside. The bottle was empty. At least 20, maybe 30 tablets gone in less than a week. I looked up at Mallory's sleeping face. I jumped at a loud thwack on the window. Irrationally, I wondered if someone had thrown a rock. It was more likely that a bird had flown into the glass, especially considering how clean it had been since Mallory came to stay. I went to the window to check. Sure enough, a large black bird lay dead on the porch. It appeared to have snapped its neck when it hit the window.
Mallory would hate to see that.
And don't show her. I glanced back at her, a little worried I'd wake her up by talking to myself. But even the loud noise of the bird hitting the window hadn't caused her to stir. In that moment, I realized I was still clutching the empty aspirin bottle. I looked down at it. She must have been taking them in secret. But why? For the pain in her leg? Or for some other ailment? An overwhelming sense of frustration washed over me in that moment. And without thinking, my hand squeezed the bottle so tightly that it broke. I threw the broken bottle in the trash and stormed outside to deal with the dead bird's body. It wasn't until that evening that Mallory woke up. She started coughing right away, even as she sat up clutching the blankets close to herself.
Huh? What time is it?
Don't get up. At least not so fast. Let me help you.
I stood in the kitchen, tending the soup that had been keeping warm for hours. Mallory looked around groggily, rubbing her eyes.
But it's nighttime. Why did you let me sleep so long? I only wanted to rest for an hour or so.
That's not what your body wanted. I'm glad you got some rest anyway. It was clearly much needed.
Though I told her not to move yet, she bundled the blankets around her and made her way over to the kitchen.
Hi.
Aww. She leaned against the support beam. Her cheeks were still red, and her eyelids looked heavy. The way she wrapped the blanket around herself made her resemble a colorful turtle, with her long, slender arms poking out to hold onto the beam.
How do you feel?
Like crap, probably.
My muscles are a bit achy, but I don't feel cold anymore. I think all the blankets you piled on top of me helped.
I nodded and turned my attention back to the stove. I wanted to ask about the aspirin, but I was nervous.
Wait, are you cooking?
She took a step towards me, trying to peer into the pot, then wobbled and had to return to the support beam. It looked as though she'd barely had any strength to stand. I bit my tongue, not wanting to be overbearing. I'd get her to sit back down by offering her some food.
I am. It's ready to eat now. Go have a seat and I'll bring you a bowl.
I half expected her to argue, to insist she could get her own bowl, or that I should sit while she served me. But instead, she just backed away and went to sit at the table.
It looks really good. Thank you for making it.
My pleasure. I bet you thought I had no cooking skills. Well, it's finally my time to shine.
She laughed half-heartedly.
I look forward to seeing what you're capable of, Cooking Senpai.
She folded her blanket neatly over the chair beside her, then placed her arms on the table to form a pillow for her head. She sat with her head down till I set the bowl of soup beside her.
Oh, that looks so wonderful.
She leaned over the steaming bowl with her eyes closed, holding back her hair as she breathed it in slowly.
I use
Breathe
lots
it
of
in,
spices. They make all the difference when flavoring a dish.
I gave her a little wink, and she smiled.
Bon appetit.
We both raised steaming spoonfuls of soup. That's a lot of S's, blowing on them softly. Only Mallory's exhilaration turned raspy, hitched, and she started to cough. She dropped her spoon back in the bowl and held a hand to her throat. She drew a deep breath, looking dismayed.
I'm so sorry.
Too spicy?
No, I can't. I don't know why.
Mallory tried her best to stifle the coughs with little success. A nervous laugh came out of my mouth.
Those autumn allergies are so annoying, am I right?
She didn't answer. She was breathing very slowly and focusing very hard on bringing a spoonful of soup to her mouth. She slurped it, and honestly, she looked like she wanted to throw up.
That bad?
No,
She was racked with another coughing fit. Her chest seemed to rattle with each breath. I couldn't stand seeing her like this. I went to her, rubbing her back as I pushed a glass of water into her hands.
Here, drink some.
She nodded and clutched the glass hard, trying her best to drink while her chest heaved. A minute later, after she'd managed to take a few sips, she was able to breathe a little more easily.
I'm so sorry. I can't seem to stop.
You don't have to be sorry.
Tears began to roll down her face. They splashed onto the table and into her neglected soup bowl.
What if...
Shh.
More tears dripped from her eyes. More coughs rattled in her chest.
You don't have to worry. Everything will be okay. All you need to do is rest and let me take care of you. This will pass.
I think I maybe just want to lie down.
Okay. I'll help you upstairs to the bed. He'll be extra comfy there.
She gave a small nod. Her eyes were puffy and red as she gathered up blankets in her arms. We headed for the stairs. I walked with her, taking the steps one at a time, and holding her in case she lost her strength. Her skin felt even hotter, burning me through her sleeve. She needed a fever reducer, that was certain. I made a mental note to check when the new bottle of aspirin I'd ordered would arrive. Once we made it to the upper floor, Mallory pushed me away and started coughing into her blankets, doubling over and trying to muffle the sound of her pain. I unfurled the bed covers and helped her climb in, straightened out her collection of blankets, and pulled all the covers up over her.
All these blankets are so heavy. I can barely move.
Good. That means you're tucked in, safe and sound.
I brushed her hair back, tracing the sides of her burning face with my fingertips.
I'm going to get you some water and things. And then I'll be back, okay?
I hurried back downstairs and started loading up a tray with water, a few damp face cloths, and her uneaten bowl of soup. I wanted her to have it right there beside her the minute she had an appetite. But of course, that wouldn't be enough. I racked my brain for anything I had in the house to help her drive down her fever. Then it hit me. My mother used to talk about the healing properties of basil and garlic. I couldn't quite recall the specifics, but it was something, and I had both of those items growing in my home. I rushed over to the kitchen to fill the kettle with water. While that was coming up to boil, I darted in the aquaponics room. There were 4 medium-sized basil plants sitting happily under the grow lights, waiting for me to harvest their emerald petals. In that moment, my heart inflated twice its size, full of joy that I might finally be able to do something to help soothe Mallory's pain. I plucked a handful of leaves from the basil plants, which were different strains, but I didn't think it would matter. Next, I dug out some garlic and extracted a homemade jar of honey that was sitting on the back shelf. That's almost as bad as my peanut thing from Hush Hush. Almost, but yeah. Looking around at the plants and fish, I did one last scan in case there was anything else I could use. On impulse, I spotted a bright red hibiscus flower in bloom and plucked it. The lone flower had an unusually bright color amongst all the other dark, leafy greens. Dashing back to the kitchen, I added the garlic, basil, and honey to the boiling water. The concoction probably wouldn't taste very good, but I hoped it would soothe her throat and help with her cough. Delicately, I placed the flower on the tray, along with a mug of freshly brewed tea. The smell was overpowering. Maybe she wouldn't be able to smell it. Ascending the stairs, I could hear Mallory's coughing. She wasn't trying to stifle it anymore. I paused on the steps, waiting for her to finish letting it out. A small groan followed the coughing fit. I climbed the rest of the way up the stairs, plastering what I hoped was an optimistic expression onto my face.
Hey, I'm back. And I brought you your soup, in case you have an appetite. Also, some tea that should help with that cough.
She pulled up the covers close to her face in a poor attempt to hide herself. I rested the tray next to the bed and placed one of the damp cloths on her forehead. In the dim light of the bedside lamp, I could see trickles of sweat on her face, neck, and breasts.
Thank you, but you're doing too much for me.
And see, if it was me, I would think I wasn't doing enough, but...
Please, it doesn't feel like enough.
See?
Isn't there anything else I can get for you?
Her expression turned into a perplexed one for a moment. Then she forced a little smile.
Now that you mention it, I could use some tissues.
You got it.
Ah, right. I've got some in this drawer here. Ta-da!
Hey, that's handy. Wait a minute. Why does he have to... never mind. I'm trying to make jokes to deal with my own sadness right now, so... She took the packet of tissues and turned her face away, coughing a wet, guttural cough. Ooh.
Why are you so determined to take care of me?
Someone's got to. Her gaze was filled with hope and confusion. I took her hand in mine and gave it a small squeeze.
You would do the same for me, wouldn't you?
I think she would. Her lips parted and eyes opened wide. She gave me a soundless nod of reassurance.
It's a no-brainer. I care about you and want you to feel better. It's as simple as that.
There was a long silence between us, exchanging our knowing looks with gentle hand squeezes. I thought about the aspirin, the 20 or 30 pills that had disappeared in the space of a few days.
Hey, I found the aspirin bottle, by the way.
She gasped, pulling back her hand from mine to cover her face.
I'm so sorry. I should have said something sooner.
I mean, yeah, should've.
Oh, you dick.
Was it for your leg? To stop it hurting? Or did you know you were developing a fever? You know what? It doesn't matter. I placed an order for more. It should be here tomorrow or the next day, I think. I want you to know that I'm grateful to have you here. And I care about you very much.
Parting her fingers to let her eyes peek through, she slowly lowered her defenses.
I don't want to be sick.
I know.
Blame you. Being sick sucks.
I don't want you to get sick.
I'm not worried about that.
You can't be near me. You need to stay away.
I stretched out next to her on the bed, my face resting close to hers.
I'm staying right here, by your side, no matter what.
She turned to look at the tray of soup with the water and tea beside it.
What a pretty flower. Where did it come from?
Aquaponics. She reached over to gently pick up the scarlet blossom.
From my fish garden, or whatever you called it. It must have opened up today. I don't remember seeing it when I fed the fish yesterday.
It's beautiful. What type of flower is it?
A hibiscus. They only bloom for a short while, so we're lucky we got to see it.
She lay there with her eyes closed, with the flower pressed to her nose.
The petals make a wonderful tea. I'll make you some with the other blossoms, if you like.
Mallory opened her eyes, but didn't look at me. She was staring into space, deep in thought.
What is it?
Oh, nothing. The rain sounds nice. I think it's making me sleepy.
I didn't quite believe that. It seemed like there was something she didn't want to say. But I couldn't push her now.
That's perfectly alright. You have sweet dreams now.
Good night.
I lay there watching her breathe, counting the minutes between each coughing fit, resting my hand on her burning chest so I could feel her heartbeat. I had been somewhere like this before. My parents. I had tried my best to care for them when they were sick. I'd been so afraid, but I hadn't gotten sick. Part of me almost wondered, even hoped, that I might be immune. That thought in the back of my head hadn't eased my fear of strangers, of Mallory when she first appeared in my life. But now I don't care. Either way, all I wanted was for her to get better. Eventually, I drifted off to sleep too. Chapter 8, Infection. I think that's where we're going to leave this off for now. Oh. Yeah. I'm not going to do my usual outro. All the things will be linked down below. Yeah, you know the outro. Next week will most likely be the final episode of Cabin Fever, so be sure to join me for that. Until then, have a great week. Talk to you again soon.